My wife asked me for a divorce on a Wednesday morning at exactly 6:38 a.m. while I was sitting at the breakfast nook of our brownstone in Beacon Hill, reading a confidential federal banking report on my laptop. She thought I was scrolling through email. She had no idea what was actually on that screen. And honestly, that small misunderstanding, that single assumption she made, is what saved my entire life. Let me back up. Let me tell you everything from the beginning. Because what happened next, over the following 9 months, was the slowest, quietest, most carefully constructed reversal I have ever lived through. And I want you to hear it from me, exactly the way it unfolded, because I know there are people watching this right now who feel invisible in their own homes. People who feel like they've been written off by someone they used to share a bed with. If that is you, stay with me. This is for you. My name is Harrison Maddox Vance. I am 46 years old. I am a senior compliance officer at Bay State Heritage Trust, one of the older private banking institutions in Boston. I have worked there for 17 years. My job, in plain English, is to find the lies hidden inside numbers. I read transaction reports. I look for patterns the rest of the world is not supposed to see. Round-trip transfers, layering, structuring, beneficial ownership masking, the whole vocabulary of money laundering. When something is off, I file a report with the federal authorities. We call it an SAR, a suspicious activity report. Most people never hear that phrase in their lives. I see them every single day. I am good at my job because I am good at noticing things other people don't. Small things. The wrong perfume. A missing wedding ring for 13 seconds before it gets put back on. A wife who used to complain about late nights and suddenly stopped complaining. A transaction whose stated business purpose does not match its actual flow architecture. I notice all of these things. I just don't say much about most of them. My father, who was the principal of a public middle school in Worcester for 31 years, told me something on the day he died in a hospital room in 2019. He had a stroke at 68. The last thing he ever said to me was, "Harrison, the reason you don't speak much is because you actually listen. Don't ever lose that." I haven't. And honestly, if I'm being real with you for a second, I think most people in modern life have completely lost the ability to listen. They wait to talk. They wait to react. They wait to defend themselves. But listening, real listening, is a kind of weapon. You'll see what I mean. So back to that Wednesday morning. My wife, Adrienne Whitcomb Vance, who is now 39 years old, walked into our kitchen at 6:38 a.m., wearing a cream-colored silk blouse I had never seen in her closet before. A perfume that was sharper, younger, more expensive than anything I had ever bought her. And the kind of upright shoulders a person only has when they have already finished a difficult conversation in their head before they walk into the room to actually have it. I looked up from my laptop. The morning light was hitting the marble counter the way it does in late autumn in Boston. Outside our window, the sound of the early garbage truck on Mount Vernon Street. The smell of coffee finishing in the pot, she said. "Harrison, I want a divorce." I closed the laptop. I said, "Okay." And here is the part that confused her. She had clearly rehearsed for a fight. She had braced herself for tears, or anger, or pleading, or the kind of long question session where I would beg to know what I had done wrong. She got none of that. She got, "Okay." She tilted her head. She crossed her arms. She said, "That's it? That's your reaction? You're not even going to ask why?" I said. "I know why." She blinked, just once. And in that single blink, I watched something happen behind her eyes. Something between confusion and a small flicker of fear. Then she covered it, quickly, professionally, the way she had learned to cover things over the past year. She said, "What does that mean, Harrison?" I tapped the closed laptop twice. I said, "It means I have been doing my job, Adrienne. Same as always." She did not understand what I meant. She would. 9 months later, she picked up her stainless steel travel mug. She filled it with coffee. She walked out of the kitchen in heels that clicked across the original 1880s hardwood. The front door clicked shut. Her car started in the brick alley behind our building. She drove away to her office, and I sat at the breakfast nook for a long, long time. Then I opened the laptop again. I went back to the report I had been reading when she walked in. Suspicious activity report. Transaction reference 9914MR 2023, Mercer Ridge Capital Partners. The fifth one I had flagged in 4 months. I made a small handwritten note in the margin of my legal pad. It said, "She filed today." Then I went back to work. Now, let me pause for 1 second and tell you something personal. Because this is the part of the story where most people would have exploded. Most people would have grabbed her arm. Most people would have screamed. Most people would have called her mother, called her sister, called the locksmith. And honestly, if I'm being completely transparent with you, part of me wanted to. Part of me wanted to flip that breakfast table over and watch the coffee splatter across the wall. But here's what I have learned in 17 years of looking at hidden financial crimes. The loudest reaction is always the weakest reaction. The person who screams loses. The person who waits wins. Always. So I waited. Let me take you back 4 months earlier, to July of 2023, the corporate dinner that started everything. Mercer Ridge Capital Partners, Adrian's firm, was hosting a private cocktail and seated dinner at the Mandarin Oriental in Back Bay, 12th floor. Private dining room, view of the Charles River, and the lights of Cambridge across the water. Maybe 45 guests. Adrian had been promoted from executive assistant to vice president of operations a year earlier, from assistant to VP in just under 3 years. No MBA, no prior operations experience. She had explained the promotion to me at the time by saying her boss saw potential in her. I had nodded. I had said nothing, because that is what I do. I watch. I noticed her boss the moment he entered the room. His name was Stafford Llewellyn Carrington, 60 years old, 6'4", silver hair brushed back like a senator, a charcoal Brioni suit, the kind that costs roughly what a used car costs. Twice divorced, 3 adult children he barely spoke to. Net worth somewhere around $360 million based on what I had been able to find in public filings. He owned a horse property in Lenox, a triplex penthouse on Commonwealth Avenue, and a sailing house on Nantucket. Both of his ex-wives lived in significantly, let's say, reduced circumstances. There were quiet rumors about why. I watched him work the room the way a shark works, a coral reef, smooth, efficient, unhurried. He shook hands with the senior partners. He laughed at a young analyst's joke without actually finding it funny. He kissed the wife of his CFO on both cheeks. And then, I watched him stop next to Adrian. She was talking to 2 other vice presidents near the bar, glass of Sancerre in her right hand, left hand resting on the marble bar top. Stafford came up behind her. His left hand rested on her lower back, just for a moment, maybe 3 seconds, maybe 4. And here is the detail that broke everything inside me without showing on my face. She did not flinch. She did not turn. She did not register surprise. She did not even slightly shift her weight away from his hand, which meant it was not the first time, not even close to the first time. I was standing across the room. I had a glass of bourbon in my hand. I was talking to a man named Howard Kemmerich, who worked in Mercer Ridge's accounting department. Howard was telling me about his daughter applying to Northeastern University. I was nodding. I was smiling at the right places. I was watching my wife being touched by her boss in a room full of people, and not one of those people thought it was unusual. That, in itself, told me everything. And I want to tell you something here, viewer to viewer, because I think this matters. If you ever find yourself in a moment like that, a moment where you see something you cannot unsee, please, please, please do not react in the room. Do not make a scene. Do not give them the gift of knowing you saw. Walk out of that room with your dignity. Get into your car, drive home, and then, in the silence of your own kitchen, decide what you are going to do over the next 12 months. Because reaction is amateur, strategy is professional. We drove home that night in silence. Adrian fell asleep in the passenger seat with her phone face down on her lap. When we got into bed, she said, "That was a long evening. I'm exhausted," I said. "Yeah." She rolled over and was asleep in 4 minutes. I lay in the dark for 2.5 hours staring at the ceiling. I thought about Howard Kemmerich's daughter. I thought about the bourbon. I thought about the way Stafford's hand had moved. And then, slowly, I started thinking about Mercer Ridge Capital Partners' recent transaction patterns at my bank. 3 days later, on a Friday morning, a suspicious activity report came across my desk at Bay State Heritage. The transaction belonged to a commercial account held by Mercer Ridge Capital Partners. The stated business purpose said, investment fund consolidation. The actual transaction structure was a circular flow through 3 shell entities registered in the Cayman Islands. Money flowed out of one offshore account, passed through Mercer Ridge's main operating account, was sent to a different offshore account, came back through a 4th shell, and ended up roughly where it started, minus a small percentage that quietly disappeared into Mercer Ridge's stated revenue. It was textbook layering. Classic. The kind of pattern they show you on the first day of certified anti-money laundering training. I sat at my desk for an hour with the printout in front of me, coffee going cold. My office door closed. Then I pulled up our complete transaction history for Mercer Ridge, going back 26 months. I exported the data. I sorted by transaction type. I cross-referenced counterparty accounts against publicly available beneficial ownership databases, and I found 3 more transactions with the exact same architecture. Same week, same month, different shell companies, same flow. In the same week, my wife had been touched on her lower back by Stafford Carrington at a corporate dinner. In the same week, Stafford Carrington was almost certainly laundering money through my bank. I did not yet understand that the 2 things were connected. I would. Soon. And honestly, if I had to give you one piece of advice from this whole story, it would be this. The universe rarely sends you one signal at a time. When something is wrong, it is usually wrong in more than one place. Your job, if you are paying attention, is to start asking why these signals are arriving at the same time, because they almost always are. For the next 3 months, August, September, October of 2023, I conducted 2 parallel investigations. The financial one I conducted at the bank. I built a paper trail. I documented every Mercer Ridge transaction that fit the laundering pattern. I mapped the shell company web. I filed formal SARs on each suspicious flow. I disclosed my marital connection to Adrian in writing, the way the rules required, and my supervisor, after consulting with the bank's general counsel, kept me on the file precisely because my familiarity with Adrian's role meant I could see things outsiders could not. The legal team reviewed every report I submitted before it left the building. I was not freelancing. I was not going rogue. I was operating with full institutional cover. And let me tell you, that cover is the most important detail in this entire story. Because 18 months later, when this all came apart, the fact that I had documented everything, disclosed everything, and operated inside the rules, that is what made my testimony bulletproof. The personal investigation I conducted at home. I noticed the late nights, the new La Perla lingerie I wasn't supposed to see in the laundry, the new Hermes scarf, the new shoes from a Newbury Street boutique I had never heard of, the weekend off-site retreats that were never on any company calendar I could find. I noticed when she came home at 14 inches the morning, smelling like a different cologne, ducked straight into the master bathroom, and showered before getting into bed next to me. I noticed when her wedding ring stopped appearing on certain Tuesdays and Thursdays. I noticed when she started taking her phone with her into the bathroom every morning. I never confronted her. I never raised my voice. I never even looked at her differently. I just watched, documented, waited. I started keeping a small brown leather notebook in the bottom locked drawer of my home office desk. The kind of notebook a contractor uses to track hours on a job site. Cheap, plain, forgettable. I wrote dates. Observations. August 18th. A wore new perfume to team dinner. Came home 12:50, 1 a.m. Showered before bed. September 2nd. A's phone rang at Sables. Tiga tiga p.m. Took it into the upstairs hallway. Low voice. 6 minutes. September 16th. A went to weekend retreat in the Berkshires. No paperwork. No receipts. No company emails confirming the trip. October 6th, A wore wedding ring at dinner with her mother in Cambridge. Removed it at 9:02 p.m. in the bathroom. Did not put it back on for the drive home. By the 3rd week of October, that notebook had 36 pages. And I want to pause here and say something because I know some of you watching are sitting with a feeling in your chest right now. Maybe you are noticing things in your own life. Maybe you are seeing little signals you have been telling yourself are nothing. If you are in that situation, do not gaslight yourself. Do not tell yourself you are being paranoid. Trust the small signals. Write them down. Lock them away. You may never need them, but if you ever do, you will be very, very glad you wrote them down on the days they happened. Memory fades. Notebooks don't. On the morning of Saturday, October 28th, 2023, Adrian was upstairs in the shower. Her phone was face down on the kitchen counter. It buzzed. I am not the kind of man who reads his wife's phone. I had never done it in 12 years of marriage. But the phone buzzed 5 times in roughly 90 seconds, and the lock screen kept lighting up with the same 2 initials, SC. I picked up the phone. She had left it unlocked. I read the most recent message. After divorce finalized, no more sneaking around. Firm needs you on paper. Heritage trust transactions can flow through your name once you're a clean party. Cleaner that way. Talk tonight at the apartment. S. I sat down at the breakfast nook. I read the message 3 times. The dishwasher was humming. The shower upstairs was still running. A finch was singing on the windowsill outside. Stafford Carrington was not just having an affair with my wife. He was planning to use her, after our divorce, to layer fraudulent transactions in her name, to create legal distance between himself and the federal exposure he had to know was building. He was recruiting her into a money laundering conspiracy, and she was almost certainly walking into it without fully understanding what she was about to sign. I took a photograph of that text screen with my own phone. I put her phone back down, face down, exactly where she had left it, in exactly the same orientation. Then I went into my home office and closed the door. I sat at my desk for almost an hour without moving. I thought about my children. My daughter Coralie was 9 years old. My son Beckett was 6. They were upstairs in their rooms watching weekend cartoons. They had no idea what was happening. They had no idea what was about to happen. I thought about my father in that hospital room. Don't lose that. I thought about the next year of my life. About waking up every morning next to a woman who had already decided I was disposable. Every morning. For who knew how many months. Until she filed and made it official. I thought about the alternative. Confront her. Make a scene. Call her parents. Call Stafford's wife. Forward that text to half of Boston. That alternative felt incredible for about 30 seconds. Then I thought about the federal SARS sitting in a database in Virginia. I thought about the 4 shell companies in the Cayman Islands. I thought about the 4 months of pattern documentation I now had on my work computer. I thought about a man named Eldridge Fenway Pruitt, and I made one phone call. Eldridge Fenway Pruitt was 66 years old, senior partner at Pruitt and Halloran, a litigation firm on Federal Street in the financial district, former federal prosecutor. 9 years with the United States Attorney's Office, District of Massachusetts. The kind of lawyer other lawyers were quietly afraid of. I had testified in a case he prosecuted 8 years earlier. Different matter, mortgage fraud at a regional bank where I had been a junior compliance analyst before joining Bay State Heritage. We had spent 12 hours together preparing my testimony. On the last day of the trial, in the elevator going down to the lobby, he had said, "Harrison, if you ever need a lawyer in your life, call me. Not someone like me. Me." I called him. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Eldridge, this is Harrison Vance. We worked together on the Coastal Fidelity case 8 years ago." "Harrison, of course. What can I do for you? I have a problem. It is bigger than I can handle alone." He paused. "Are you in physical danger right now?" "No." "Are your children in physical danger?" "Not now. Possibly later," he said. "Can you be at my office Monday at 7 p.m.? "Yes." "Bring everything. Don't filter. Don't curate. I want to see the entire thing. Bank records, personal observations, photographs, everything." "Eldridge." "Yes?" "I'm going to need you to be more than just a lawyer for this." "I understand." He hung up. And honestly, that conversation, that one phone call, was the moment everything changed. Because here is something I want you to understand. The right ally, the right person at the right moment, can rewrite the entire ending of your life. But you have to know who that person is before you ever need them. Build those relationships when you don't need them, because by the time you need them, it is too late to start. I met Eldridge at his office on Monday, October 30th, 2023. The building was nearly empty. He had told the security guard at the lobby desk to expect me. He met me in the lobby himself. We rode the elevator to the 22nd floor. His corner office had a view of the harbor and the planes coming into Logan across the water. Mahogany conference table. 2 crystal glasses on a sidebar. He gestured for me to sit. I had brought 2 folders. The first folder had every Mercer Ridge document, every SAR, every transaction analysis, every shell company connection, every flowchart. The second folder had the affair, the corporate dinner, the notebook, the photograph of the text. Eldridge put on reading glasses. He read for 45 minutes without saying a single word. When he finally looked up, his face had changed. Something behind his eyes had locked into place, he said. Harrison? Yes. Do you understand what you have in these folders? I have a divorce and a federal crime. He shook his head slowly. You have something much bigger than that. He stood up. He walked to the window. He looked out at the harbor for a long moment. Then he turned back. Stafford Carrington has been on the FBI's white-collar radar for almost 7 years. 2 prior investigations have stalled because no insider has ever cooperated. The Bureau knows the laundering is happening. They cannot prove the chain of custody beyond a reasonable doubt. Why not? Because every person with direct knowledge benefits from the operation. They will not testify. They have too much to lose. And me? You are different. You are a documented compliance officer at a regulated institution with formally filed SARs already in the federal database. You have done your job inside the system. Your testimony will be unimpeachable. You are the witness they have been waiting for. He sat down again. But there is a problem. Tell me, if you file for divorce now, or if you confront Adrian, or if you let her see one flicker of what you actually know, they will lawyer up. Stafford will move the laundering operation offshore, possibly to Dubai, possibly to Singapore. The federal case becomes much harder to build. We lose the window. So what do you suggest? He looked at me for a long time. I suggest you do nothing. Nothing. You don't confront her. You don't tell her you know about the affair. You don't tell her you know about Stafford's operation. You let her file when she's ready. You play the heartbroken husband. You agree to whatever settlement she demands. You sign every document her divorce attorney puts in front of you. You let her win, in public, in writing, in legal record. For how long? As long as it takes the federal government to build the case. My estimate? 9 months. 9 months. Yes, and then? Then we wait until the day of your final divorce hearing. The day she walks into a courtroom, expecting to sign her victory. Stafford will be in the gallery, watching. He will not be able to resist. He has never been able to resist watching what he believes is his own success. That is the moment we unseal the federal indictment. In open court. In front of her. In front of him. I sat with that for a long time. Eldridge did not push. He did not sell. He did not promise. He waited. And let me tell you, the silence in that office while I made that decision was the heaviest silence of my entire life. Because what he was asking me to do was give up 9 months. 9 months of being seen as a defeated man. 9 months of looking at my own children and seeing confusion in their eyes. 9 months of my mother thinking I had been dumped. 9 months of Adrian strutting through Boston as the woman who had traded up. And honestly, if I'm being real with you for a second, I almost said no. I almost stood up and walked out. Because 9 months of pretending to be someone you're not is a kind of slow death. But then I thought about my daughter, about what it would mean to her, 10 years from now, to know that her father did not flip the table when he could have, that he played the long game so that the people who deserved consequences actually got consequences. So I said, what does this cost me personally? Money? No, personally, he said. It costs you 9 months of looking like a defeated man to the woman who is destroying you. You will sign every document. You will give up the brownstone. You will give up most of the custody. You will look like a fool to your friends, to your family, to your own children temporarily. Your daughter may not look you in the eye for a while. Your son will cry. You will move out. You will rent an apartment alone. Your mother in Worcester will worry herself sick. And in exchange, in one 20-minute hearing, the entire arrangement reverses. Stafford Carrington goes to federal prison. Adrian's settlement collapses because her financial backing collapses. Custody renegotiates. Everything she thought she won evaporates. Live, in real time, in front of a judge. Are you guaranteeing this? No. I am telling you that the probability given what you have brought me, is high. 85%. And the other 15? You have given up 9 months of your life and signed away assets you cannot get back. That is the risk. I sat with that. I thought about Coralie's face when I would tell her I was moving out. I thought about Beckett crying. I thought about Adrian walking into a courtroom in 9 months in a victory dress. I said, "Eldridge." "Yes, I'm in." He nodded once. "We begin, and I want to say something to you right now, watching this. If you have ever had to make a decision that asked you to stay quiet when every part of you wanted to scream, you know the weight of what I just described. There is a kind of pain that comes from choosing patience over reaction. It does not feel noble. It does not feel strong. It feels like swallowing glass for breakfast every single morning. But there are some battles in life that you do not win by being loud. You win them by being so quiet that your enemy forgets you are still in the room. For the next 9 months, I played the role. Adrian filed for divorce on Thursday, November 9th, 2023, 2 days after our kitchen conversation. Her attorney was a man named Sebastian Kelmscott. Eldridge was right. Stafford had recommended him. Sebastian represented Stafford in everything. I signed every document Sebastian put in front of me without reading past the first page. The custody arrangement, every other weekend with the kids. The asset distribution, she got the brownstone in Beacon Hill. I got the furniture in my Honda. The alimony, $2,100 a month for 6 years. I moved out on November 21st, 2023, into a small 2-bedroom apartment in a building in the Fenway. Beige carpet, popcorn ceilings, a window that looked out at a brick wall. The kind of apartment a freshly divorced compliance officer is expected to rent. I told my mother, Marlene, on a Saturday afternoon. She was 72 years old, living in the same house in Worcester where I had grown up. I drove out and told her at her kitchen table over coffee. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Your father would be proud of how you are handling this." I did not tell her about Eldridge. I did not tell her about the federal investigation. I did not tell her I was playing a role. I let her think her son was a graceful, dignified man going through a hard divorce. She would understand later. She deserved to understand later. I told my closest friend at the bank, Marcellus Boudreau. He was 39, also a compliance officer. The most analytical person I had ever worked next to. We sat in the parking garage of Bay State Heritage at the end of a workday in late November. I told him a partial version. Adrian was leaving. I was moving out. I did not tell him about Stafford. He did not ask. That is what real friendship looks like. It does not demand explanations. It just shows up and stands next to you in the silence. I told my children, Coralie and Beckett, on a Sunday afternoon in the brownstone living room. Adrian sat next to me on the couch. She did most of the talking. She used the phrases parents use when they have been coached. We both decided, this will be best for everyone. Daddy is going to live in a different house, but we will both still be here for you. Coralie stared at her hands the entire time. Beckett cried. I sat there with my hands on my knees, and I said almost nothing, because there was nothing I could say that would not make it worse. Coralie did not look at me for almost 5 weeks. Beckett called me 3 nights a week from his mother's phone just to ask if I was eating dinner. I told him yes every time. Some nights I had not eaten dinner. Some nights I had eaten a granola bar at my desk while reviewing wiretap summaries. I told him yes anyway. And honestly, if I'm being honest with you for a second, that part broke me more than the affair, more than the divorce, more than losing the house. A 6-year-old boy calling his father to make sure his father was eating. That was the real cost of the 9 months. Every 2 weeks I met Eldridge and FBI Special Agent Quinton Aoki at a small unmarked office on Stewart Street near the theater district. Tax preparer on one side, acupuncturist on the other. The kind of building no one ever looks twice at. Agent Aoki was 46. Korean American. FBI Boston Field Office. Financial Crime Section. 17 years working white-collar laundering cases. He read my materials in silence at every meeting. He asked precise questions. He never wasted a single word. In December, he brought me an update. Harrison, we have a second cooperator. Stafford's adult daughter, Bryony Carrington, 33 years old. Estranged from her father since his second divorce. She has known about the laundering for years. She approached the Bureau 7 weeks ago independently. That is good. It is more than good. It is the second pillar of our case. Your testimony plus hers makes this nearly bulletproof. In January, he brought another update. We have a Title III wiretap warrant on Stafford's personal cell, renewable every 30 days. In February, he brought the biggest update of all. Harrison, we have audio of Stafford coaching your wife on how to sign documents she should not be signing. He is recruiting her into the conspiracy in real time. We have her on the recording asking about her percentage of the proceeds. She is asking about her cut. She is not innocent. She is not fully knowing, but she is not innocent. I sat with that for a long time. I asked, will she be charged? Probably not criminally. The U.S. Attorney's Office will likely treat her as an unwitting facilitator who became negligent rather than knowing. That is the better legal posture for her, and frankly, the better legal posture for the case. It keeps her from fighting us. It also lets her testify against Stafford, if it ever comes to that. And civil restitution? Significant. The proceeds she has accepted from Mercer Ridge that exceed her legitimate VP salary will be subject to forfeiture. We estimate that figure at $372,000 over 3.5 years. I absorbed that number slowly. $372,000. Money that had been quietly buying her new shoes, new bags, new perfumes, the appearance of a woman moving up in the world. All of it traceable, all of it about to be clawed back. Meanwhile, Adrian was riding high. She told her sister Marisol, on a phone call recorded after Stafford's wiretap caught her end of the conversation. Harrison was always going to be a small man, Mari. I just finally accepted it. I'm coming out of this with the brownstone, the kids, and a future with a man who actually has ambition. She told her mother in March. Stafford is going to take care of me. He has already promised that I will not end up the way Mom did after the divorce. I will be in a completely different category. Stafford himself, at a private dinner at his Lenox horse property in April, told her over dessert, captured through the wiretap on her end of the call. After the divorce is finalized, you will come work directly with me. The firm needs your signature on certain transactions. We will discuss the structure. There is a lot of money in this for you. You are going to be very, very comfortable. She did not understand she was being recruited into a federal crime. She thought she was being promoted. She thought she was leveling up. And honestly, watching all of this through transcripts at our bi-weekly meetings was the strangest experience of my life. Because I was watching my wife of 12 years build a future that was already, quietly, federally, doomed. And she had no idea. Zero idea. In June of 2024, the federal grand jury for the District of Massachusetts indicted Stafford Llewellyn Carrington on 14 counts of money laundering, 5 counts of bank fraud, and 3 counts of operating a continuing criminal enterprise. The indictment was sealed. The final divorce hearing was scheduled for Tuesday, July 23, 2024. The plan was to unseal the indictment at the exact moment the hearing began. Eldridge and I had one last meeting on July 19th, 4 days before the hearing. We sat in his office at 6 in the evening. He poured 2 glasses of Glenlivet, the first time I had ever seen him drink during a meeting. Harrison, tomorrow morning, the federal prosecutors will sign off on the unsealing schedule. The judge in your divorce case has already been quietly briefed by the U.S. Attorney's Office. She has signed off on a courtroom motion that will be filed during the proceeding. Which judge? The Honorable Magdalena Octavia Truscott, 63 years old, Family Court Bench, Suffolk County, for 21 years. Before that, federal prosecutor herself in the Southern District of New York. Is that good for us? It is excellent for us. He sipped his scotch. Harrison, I want you to picture exactly what is going to happen Tuesday morning. You will walk into that courtroom dressed as the man Adrian thinks you are. Defeated, quiet, resigned. She will walk in dressed for victory. Stafford will be in the gallery on the respondent's side because he wants to witness her win in person. That is who he is. Yes, the hearing will start. Sebastian Kelmscott will tell the judge there are no contested matters. Then I will rise and tell the judge there is one matter. The judge will allow me to proceed. I will hand her the federal indictment. She will read it. She will then take judicial notice of the indictment in open court, on the record. The moment she reads the charges aloud, federal agents in the hallway will move into position. Stafford will hear the charges. He will try to leave. He will not get out of that hallway. And Adrian? Adrian will sit in that courtroom and watch her boss being arrested in real time. She will understand, in the space of about 45 seconds, that the man who was supposed to be her future is going to federal prison, that her financial backing has just collapsed, that the divorce settlement she believed she was about to sign is going to be reversed because Stafford's assets will be frozen and her own assets will be subject to civil forfeiture. In one hearing, I drank the rest of my scotch slowly. Eldridge, yes. Will my children be safe? Your children will be at your mother's house in Worcester on Tuesday. They will not be in the courtroom. You can call them after. And after? After, you go back to your life. The custody arrangement gets modified within 30 days. You take primary physical custody. Adrian gets supervised visitation through the school year. The investigation proceeds against Stafford. The divorce gets renegotiated under entirely new financial terms. I nodded. He raised his glass. To 9 months of silence. I raised mine. To 9 months of silence. Tuesday, July 23rd, 2024. 9:00 a.m. Suffolk County Family Court. Courtroom 7C, the Honorable Magdalena Truscott presiding. The hearing was scheduled for routine final divorce decree approval. All terms had been agreed upon weeks earlier. The proceeding was expected to last under 30 minutes. I arrived at 8:42 a.m. I wore a charcoal gray suit that did not fit me as well as it had a year earlier. I had lost 15 pounds in those 9 months. I had not eaten well. I had not slept well. The mirror in my Fenway apartment had been showing me a thinner, hollower version of myself for some time. I sat at the petitioner's table next to Eldridge. He looked at me. Are you ready? Yes. Last chance to walk away from any of this. I'm ready. He nodded. Adrian arrived at 8:53 a.m. She wore a cream-colored Chanel sheath dress, the same color as the silk blouse from the morning she had asked me for a divorce 9 months earlier. Pearl earrings I had never seen. Her hair was styled the way she only styled it for major professional events. She walked into that courtroom like she was walking into a coronation. She glanced at me as she passed the petitioner's table. I did not react. She sat at the respondent's table next to Sebastian Kelmscott. Sebastian was 53 years old. Expensive suit. Italian cufflinks. The kind of attorney who charged $850 an hour and was worth it for the right client. He did not know Stafford had been indicted 3 weeks ago. He did not know the indictment was sealed. He did not know what was about to happen in the next 20 minutes. Stafford Carrington walked into the courtroom at 8:57 a.m., tall, silver hair, charcoal brioni. He sat in the gallery, second row, respondent's side. He sat back, crossed his legs, adjusted his cufflink. He smiled at Adrian when she glanced back at him. She smiled back. The bailiff announced the judge at 9:01 a.m. All rise. We rose. Judge Truscott entered. Black robe. Reading glasses on a thin gold chain around her neck. She moved to the bench with the practiced economy of 2 decades on the family court. Be seated. This is the final hearing for Vance versus Vance. Case number 2024DV3318. I have reviewed the consent decree submitted by both parties. Counsel, are there any final matters before I sign the decree? Sebastian Kelmscott rose. Your Honor, the respondent has no further matters. We are prepared to proceed with the decree as drafted. Counsel for the petitioner. Eldridge Pruitt rose. Your Honor, the petitioner has one matter. We are filing an emergency motion. The courtroom went still. I watched Adrian's face. The smile flickered. Not gone yet, but flickered. Sebastian shot up faster than he had probably shot up in years. Your Honor, this is a final decree hearing. There are no contested matters. We received no notice of any motion. I object to any motion at this stage as procedurally improper. Counsel, I will hear the petitioner's motion before ruling on the objection. Mr. Pruitt, Eldridge spoke clearly. Your Honor, the petitioner respectfully requests that this court take judicial notice of an unsealed federal indictment that was filed at 9:00 a.m. this morning in the United States District Court for the District of Massachusetts. The indictment is directly relevant to the financial disclosures and the asset distribution submitted in the consent decree currently before this court. Eldridge walked to the bench. He handed a folder to the bailiff. The bailiff handed it up to Judge Truscott. The judge opened the folder. She read for 30 seconds. She turned to the second page. Read for another 20 seconds. Then she looked up. She looked directly at the gallery, at Stafford. Stafford was looking at his phone. He had not yet realized the judge was looking at him. Counsel approached the bench. Both attorneys approached. Adrian turned to look at me. For the first time in 9 months, I was not pretending to be broken. I looked back at her, and something in her face shifted. Something underneath the makeup, underneath the Chanel, underneath the 9 months of confidence. The smile was gone now. She mouthed. "What is this?" I said softly. "Nothing." The attorneys returned to their tables. Sebastian was pale. His hands were shaking very slightly. He sat down without looking at Adrian. Judge Truscott spoke, slowly, clearly, loud enough for the gallery to hear. "This court takes judicial notice that the United States government has filed a criminal indictment against Mr. Stafford Llewellyn Carrington of Boston, Massachusetts, for 14 counts of money laundering under Title 18 United States Code Section 1956, 5 counts of bank fraud under Title 18 United States Code Section 1344, and 3 counts of operating a continuing criminal enterprise under Title 18 United States Code Section 848. The indictment was unsealed at 9:00 a.m. this morning, simultaneously with the commencement of this hearing. The gallery erupted in murmuring. Stafford Carrington looked up from his phone, his mouth opened. He stood up. "Your Honor, this is. What is this? Mr. Carrington, sit down. You are not a party to this proceeding. You will be addressed by federal authorities shortly." He did not sit down. He looked at Adrian. Adrian was already turned around in her chair, looking at him. Stafford, what is she talking about?" He had no answer. He turned and started walking very quickly toward the courtroom doors. The doors opened from the outside. Special Agent Quentin Aoki stepped through. 3 more agents behind him. "Stafford Carrington, you are under arrest for federal money laundering, bank fraud, and racketeering. Hands behind your back, please." Stafford stopped. His hands began to shake. He looked back at Adrian through the open doorway. His mouth was open. He had no words. The entire performance of confidence he had carried for 60 years was collapsing in real time. Agent Aoki stepped forward. "Mr. Carrington, hands behind your back. I will not ask again." Stafford put his hands behind his back. The agents cuffed him. They led him out into the hallway. He did not look back. The doors closed. The courtroom was very quiet. Adrian was still standing. She looked at her attorney. She looked at me. She looked at the judge. She looked back at me. "Harrison." I did not respond. Harrison, what is happening?" Sebastian Kelmscott was reading the indictment paperwork. He was sweating through his shirt. He turned to her. "Mrs. Vance, we need to discuss something privately. Right now." "Sebastian, what is happening?" "Your boss has just been arrested for federal money laundering. Multiple counts, years of activity, and the U.S. Attorney's Office is naming you as a person of interest in the related civil forfeiture proceedings." What?" Judge Truscott spoke. "Mrs. Vance, do you wish to proceed with the final decree as drafted, or do you wish to request a continuance given today's developments?" Adrian could not speak. Sebastian responded for her. "Your Honor, given the federal investigation and its potential implications for asset disclosure, the respondent moves for a 30-day continuance, pending review of new information." "Granted. New hearing date, November 19th, 2024. We are adjourned." The gavel struck. I stood up. I turned. I walked down the aisle of the gallery, past Stafford's now empty seat, past Adrian, who was still standing at the respondent's table with her mouth slightly open. I did not look back. Outside the courthouse, on the granite steps, in the July humidity, Eldridge caught up with me. He did not say anything. We just stood there for a moment. A pigeon landed on the iron railing. A taxi went by. Then he said, "How do you feel?" I thought about it. Quiet. He nodded. "That's about right. Stafford Carrington spent the next 18 months fighting federal charges. He hired 3 of the best white-collar defense attorneys in the country. They could not save him. The evidence was overwhelming. The cooperating witnesses were credible. His own daughter, Bryony, was prepared to testify. He took a plea deal in February of 2026, 16 years federal prison. He surrendered an additional $104 million in forfeited assets. Mercer Ridge Capital Partners was dissolved by court order. The remaining employees were terminated with 60 days severance. The 30-day continuance on the divorce stretched to almost 6 months. Adrian's settlement, which had been built entirely on the assumption that she had a wealthy boss lover funding her future, fell apart completely. Stafford's assets were frozen within 48 hours of the arrest. He could no longer pay her divorce attorneys. When the divorce was finally finalized in February of 2025, the terms had reversed completely. Federal asset disclosure requirements forced Adrian to reveal she had accepted approximately $372,000 in undisclosed consulting fees from Mercer Ridge that she had never declared as marital income. Those fees were subject to civil forfeiture as proceeds of unlawful activity. She lost the brownstone in Beacon Hill. The federal government took it as part of the asset recovery process. She lost her job. The firm collapsed within 4 months of Stafford's arrest. She lost her professional standing in Boston. She was not criminally charged. The U.S. Attorney's Office determined she had been an unwitting facilitator who became negligent rather than knowing. Her share of the marital assets, after restitution, was reduced to approximately $9,400. I received primary physical custody of Coralie and Beckett. Adrian received supervised visitation during the school year, unsupervised in the summer. Bay State Heritage Trust promoted me to Chief Compliance Officer in March of 2025. The Mercer Ridge case became a teaching example in compliance training programs nationwide. I have spoken at 4 industry conferences over the past year. I have never publicly named Adrian in any of them. It is now spring of 2026. I am 46 years old. I live in a smaller, quieter house in Brookline now. The kind of house I could have happily lived in my whole life if Adrian had not always wanted more. Coralie is 12. She loves to read. She is observant, like her father. She forgave me sometime around her 11th birthday. She has never asked me about the courthouse day. I do not know if she ever will. Beckett is 9. He plays Little League. He is starting to forgive his mother. He still calls me 3 nights a week from her phone just to ask if I am eating dinner. I tell him yes every time. These days it is true. I cook dinner most nights. I drive the kids to school every morning at 7:32 a.m. I have not dated since the divorce. Maybe eventually. Not yet. Adrian lives in a 1-bedroom apartment in Alston. She works as a part-time office manager for a dental practice in Brighton. She is quieter now. She does not perform happiness anymore. The kids see her every other weekend. She has never apologized to me. I do not believe she is capable of it. I no longer need her to be. Eldridge Pruitt comes for dinner twice a year. We have become real friends. He is teaching Beckett how to play chess. He brings my mother flowers when he visits Worcester, which embarrasses her in a way that secretly pleases her. Stafford Carrington is in federal prison in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. He has 14 years left. Bryony Carrington reached out to me last summer. We had coffee at a small place in the South End. She told me her father's arrest was the first time in her life she had ever felt free. She is 34 now. She works at a nonprofit that helps women leave financially abusive marriages. Somehow she became the best person to come out of that family. And here is what this whole story taught me, and what I want to leave you with. We live in a culture that has confused volume with strength. We think the loud person is the strong person. We think the person who fights first is the person who wins. That is a lie. The truth is, the most dangerous person in any room is the person who is calm when everyone expects them to react. The person who listens when everyone expects them to talk. The person who waits when everyone expects them to swing. If you are in America right now listening to this, and you are inside a marriage that feels wrong, or a business situation that feels wrong, or a friendship that feels off, please hear me. Document everything. Keep records in a place no one else can access. Do not gaslight yourself out of what you know. Talk to a lawyer before you talk to anyone else. In most U.S. states, including Massachusetts, financial misconduct discovered during a marriage can directly impact divorce proceedings, and federal cooperation can sometimes change the entire shape of an outcome. There are also free resources at most state bar associations, and organizations like the National Domestic Violence Hotline and local legal aid societies that can help you find a path forward without losing everything. The mistake most people make is that they react before they prepare. They scream before they document. They confront before they understand. By the time the dust settles, they have given the other side every advantage. Don't do that. Be quiet first. Be loud last. So let me ask you something. If you discovered that the person your spouse was leaving you for was committing a federal crime, and you were the only person in a position to expose it, what would you do? Would you confront them immediately and start a fight you might lose? Or would you stay silent for 9 months, let them believe they had already won, and let the federal government do the work for you? Some battles you fight by speaking. Some battles you win by saying nothing at all. If you have ever been underestimated by the person who knew you best, I want to hear from you. Comment 1 if you think Harrison did the right thing by staying silent for 9 months. Comment 2 if you think he should have confronted his wife the moment he saw that text message. Comment 3 if you have ever been underestimated by someone close to you and quietly proved them wrong. And right under that, tell me where you are watching from. What city? What country? What time is it where you are right now? I read every single comment, and I genuinely love hearing from people in different parts of the world, at different hours of the night and morning. This is a fictional story inspired by common real-life patterns of financial fraud and marital betrayal, but it has been 100% rewritten by me here in Boston to avoid reused content and to bring you something original. If this story moved you, hit the like button. Share it with someone who has been written off by the people who should have known better. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. I will see you in the next one.